elected, life will be easy, Kennedy declared, his voice booming off the surrounding high-rise buildings. I think to be a citizen of the United States in the 1960s is a hazardous occupation, but it is also one that offers challenge and hope, and I believe the choice lies with you on November 8th. Whether I am the candidate for the presidency or president or stay in the Senate, I regard our obligation not to please you, but to serve you. And in my judgment, in 1960, a candidate for the presidency should be willing to give the truth to the people. And the truth is that what we are now doing is not good enough. I was too young to understand the full meaning of his speech or the magnitude of the moment. I recovered his words only years later from one of those online archives no one back then could have imagined. I might not have understood exactly why the crowd cheered when it did, or that Kennedy was desperately seeking votes, locked in what would be one of the closest presidential contests ever. Yet to this 5-year-old, the scene was pure magic, electric, and important. Though I couldn't grasp the nuances, I somehow absorbed the larger message. We are the masters of our future, and politics is the means by which we shape it. From that moment on, I was hooked. I wanted to be part of the action. 52 years later, on November 5th, 2012, I stood at the foot of the stage at another huge outdoor rally on the eve of another presidential election. It was 10 p.m. in Des Moines. A crowd of 20,000 stretched from the podium on Locust Street, 4 blocks east, toward the glistening gold dome of the Iowa State Capitol. They waited for hours on that chilly November night to watch President Barack Obama deliver the final speech at the final campaign stop of his political career, and mine. For Team Obama, it was a homecoming. 4 years earlier, Iowans had breathed life into his audacious candidacy for president. Obama had virtually taken up residence there, spending 89 days in the state during the run-up to Iowa's critical first-in-the-nation presidential caucuses as he made his case for change. Along the way, he developed strong bonds with the folks he met in countless living rooms, diners, and union halls across the state. While the pundits and political insiders in Washington were smugly writing him off as a political shooting star, Obama placed his bet on Iowa and the army of idealistic young people who descended upon the state, hell-bent on changing the course of history. And without Iowa's embrace, his candidacy almost certainly would have died a quick, snowy death. Iowa was the beginning of everything. Now, steeled by 1,000 battles, Obama had returned there to plead his case, seeking the chance to finish what he had started. He had taken bold and controversial steps to revive a wounded economy, but the work of redeeming an embattled middle class was far from done. He had ended our war in Iraq, and having brought Osama bin Laden and many of al-Qaeda's leaders to justice, was on the path to ending another war in Afghanistan. Yet it would take a continued commitment to bring those troops home, and the world would only become more complex and challenging. After a lengthy and bruising fight to pass historic health care reform, it would take his next term to implement and undergird it against continuing opposition efforts at subversion and repeal. He felt an urgency to deal with the great unresolved problems of climate change and immigration reform, and maybe, just maybe, a second resounding victory would pave the way for more comedy and cooperation in Washington, which was the great unfulfilled promise of his presidency. A year earlier, following a devastating standoff with Congress over the nation's debt limit, Obama's standing with the public had hit a new low. Some polls showed his approval rating sinking perilously below 40%. Trial heats with Mitt Romney, the likely Republican nominee, showed the president running well below the majority he would need to win. Nate Silver, the whiz-kid political handicapper, who later would win plaudits for accurately calling the outcome of the election, had written a provocative and for our team thoroughly depressing magazine piece for the New York Times with a pointed headline, "Is Obama Toast?" And while Obama remained publicly defiant back then, he was privately resigned to the prospect of defeat. "I'm realistic about this. We have an uphill fight," he said during one of our conversations in the dark days of 2011. "Michelle and I have talked about it, about where we would live if we lose. The girls are settled here now, so we really need to think about that." But whatever doubts Obama harbored were matched by a preternatural sense of